Hi, this is Anna from Post Me a Book. Today I want to talk about the book that shamed me and made me feel a bit disappointed in myself. And the book is called Wish to Inform You That Tomorrow We'll Be Killed with Our Families, and it's by Philip Gourevitch. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. And I do have the original copy of this book somewhere, but I took it off because it was easier to read without, but I'll pop up the cover somewhere up there. This book is about the 1994 Rwanda genocide. So it's a non-fiction book. And it took place, as I said, it took place in 1994. And this genocide, it was the first time after the Second World War that the word genocide was used for a case of ethnic cleansing, which is what this war is about. It's got a lot of trigger warnings, this book, because the author describes, he went over to Rwanda and took witness stories of survivors, and he describes what he himself saw, and he describes very explicitly what the witnesses say. So the killings and the pictures, the deaths, the skulls that are left remaining, the bodies that are left remaining in the country itself as a memorial, he describes it very explicitly. It's not a book for the faint-hearted, and it's an understanding that if you read this book, then you're going to have to be aware that this is what you're going to be reading about, or actually perhaps imagining. 1994, Rwanda. Rwanda is divided up by Hutsi people and the Tutsi people mainly, and then there's another group of people who are a much smaller minority, but it's mainly the Hutsis and Tutsis. Then Rwanda, this genocide that happened in 1994 was was mainly about the Hutus who were in power at the time. The government was trying to eradicate the Tutsis. They have been rivals for many years, but there have also been times when they could get on together. But at this time, there was an uprising of the Hutu regime where they decided to encourage all the Hutu people, every single one, to take up arms and to kill the Tutsis. And this is what happened. The result of which was 800,000 to 1 million people were killed in a matter of 100 days. And that is an incredibly large number of people. And what shocks me is that the Hutu regime managed to get ordinary people. It was the police, it was the militia, but it was the ordinary people as well, your neighbor, their neighbor, to just rise to arms and to kill the person who one day was your friend, and then the next became an enemy just because they were Tutsis. And they took matches and they went around killing Tutsis. It didn't matter whether you were a child, a woman, a man. They killed every single one they could get their hands on. They burnt them in churches, stadiums, because at the beginning, a lot of Tutsis came into churches because the church had always been seen as a place of sanctuary, security and sanctuary if things got bad. But that made no difference. There you could still be found. And the title of this book, We Wish to Inform You That Tomorrow We'll Be Killed with Our Families, is taken from a letter written to one of a church pastor. There was a group of people who had taken sanctuary, a group of Tutsis who had taken sanctuary in a church. And one of them had decided to write a letter to the pastor of that church, letting them know that this was what was going to happen, so that perhaps the pastor could still help them. But what happened was the church pastor themselves was among the people who came and killed them. They did nothing. That's to say, the pastor did absolutely nothing to help these people. So there's so many shocking things that happen within this time. And although I'm not going to recount Philip Gourevitch's story, it's what shocks me on my part is that this happened in 1994, and yet somehow it sort of passed me by. it's incredible for me to think it passed me by that so many people in such a short space of time was killed, and yet I didn't seem to register it. I know something about it, but I don't think I had this strong feeling of, I knew about it. I knew about the Bosnian Croatian War, but this one, somehow it came after. And that's what really shocks me, and what also disappoints me myself, that I wasn't young. And it's not that I didn't listen to the news, because I listened to the news, so I just cannot imagine how I didn't know about this. Now, this book itself is my brother's, or was my brother's, it's now mine. But it's my brother's and mine. But it's been sitting on our shelves for many years, and I think I've been avoiding it, or not really avoiding it. I haven't been reading it, partly because I'm not the best at non-fiction books, and partly because I think I wasn't ready anyway to try and understand, if there's even an understanding of what happened. Because for me, I can't quite understand how one day you can have a neighbor that you're friends with, and the next day someone tells you, kill all these people, and you do it. What we must understand is that there were Hutus who were in opposition to the Hutu regime, and there were ordinary Hutus who actually did try and help save Tutsis. So it's not that all of them took to arms, but it's an incredible number of people who did that. Because without the ordinary people, these massacres would not have happened in the speed that they did. So that's the incredible thing, is that it just took place in such a short space of time, and so many people died. When I read this book, I felt, I won't say that you get any understanding of why or how it happens. There is history behind this, and they have come out. Well, now that I've read this book and read further, I realize there have come out tons of other books about this war. There's been criticism for this author also, because people say he didn't actually describe, or he doesn't actually explain what other things that might have led up to this war. And he doesn't show that the Tutsi army, the rebel army, the Tutsi army, who finally took control, that they themselves actually killed a lot of Hutus, partly during the time that they took control, and partly after the time they took control, that's to say that they were also equally responsible for a lot of atrocities. Whereas in this book, the critics try and say that the author just portrays it as a good war between the good and the bad. That's to say the Hutus are bad and the Tutsis were good. I will say, irrespective of that, we can't take away the fact that so many people died in this book. Irrespective of bad people on the Hutu side, bad people on the Tutsi side, there are so many people who died in this book, and we have to respect that. And the other thing that shocks me about this book is just the complacency of the international community. And I think that's also something that is generally agreed. There was no one who did anything for these people in the international community. The UN knew. They had UN soldiers in Rwanda, but the UN soldiers were told to just don't engage unless you yourselves are under attack. And that is what they literally did. They did not engage. They saw people being killed and they did nothing. Kofi Annan, who was the UN Secretary General at the time, he knew about this. And he thought the man who was telling them, the UN military guy who was telling them, this is going to happen, they just figured that he's overstepping his role and told him, no, we're not doing anything. The French were encouraging the Hutus and helped them along with the killings. The Belgians, who were also there, did nothing. The US did nothing. So all the international community, all of them knew about what was going on and did nothing. So despite having a genocide policy, convention that was held up, nobody did anything. So part of the criticism also comes to some of this, even if bad people on both sides, some of this could have been prevented. That's to say the innocent people could have at least a lot more been saved if only this country had some help, so that both sides, the war could have been stopped, perhaps. So that's also something that I find very, very upsetting, really, because I guess you kind of realize perhaps we're just naive in thinking that without actually having a political motivation from the international community, they're not going to save you. I mean, you kind of lose faith in the people that you think will come out there at some point and help you along. And that's not to say that it's so easy. It's not so black and white. But sometimes when things like this happen, you just think, okay, I see, that's what it's like. Another thing that my other thoughts on this book was at the end of the book, when Philip Gourevitch, he takes up that a lot of Hutu refugees had fled to Zaire, and they were in refugee camps, Zaire, the Congo. They were in refugee camps, and the Rwandese soldiers, or the Rwandese who had now taken over, wanted these camps disbanded because a lot of the Hutu military and the Hutu government people were still alive and kicking and plotting in these camps. So the Tutsi wanted them disbanded. So they came and did it themselves because they'd waited for the international community to try and help, but they didn't. So the Tutsis decided to do it themselves. But in doing it, when the Hutus were trying to flee, that's when the Tutsis also killed them. And it's, as the book says, they also enjoyed the killing. Philip Gourevitch, he said at the end, he talks to some of the aid workers from the international aid workers who were there. And it always strikes me as it must be so hard as an aid worker of such conflicts to see such atrocities. And how do you come away from that? How do you continue working about that, or in your head? How do you continue working with such things, not only in your head, but physically, when you see people who you're trying to help are being killed? The people who are supposedly good are also doing bad things. So it just brings up a lot of thoughts. But what's the final thing with this, what has been good for me with this book, is that it's made me, not only have I finally read it and I still don't get how people do this, and I hope that I cannot do this, because I don't understand this at all. But what it has done is that I've read a bit further. So I've educated myself, this book, and I've educated myself to understand how some of this anger and hatred between these two people, why it exists. And not only that, that also listening to, or also appreciating that there is other parts of the story that are not taken up in this book. So that I'm still reading now. It is a book worth reading if you want to know about the Rwanda war, but it's not for the faint-hearted. And that's all I'm going to say about this book. So until next time, until next time, thank you for listening. Bye-bye.